Hey guys, Frank here with another episode of Modern Church Leader. I'm back with Trey VanCamp out in Arizona. This is Trey's second time on the show. We were trying to figure out when the first time was, but years back, you were on and we talked a lot about YouTube. But you're also a church planner, so we're going to talk church planning today.
Thank you for having me on. Honestly, I'm more passionate about the conversation around church planning, so I'm all in, excited, man.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Let me know. It seems like, the internet demons are going crazy.
I just noticed a lag. Hopefully we're all right.
A little bit, but let me know if it's lagging on my side. I think it's recording us both, but all good. Cool. We're going to get through this. Tell us a little bit about your story when it comes to church planning. Like, when did you plant the church and how did you get into ministry at that level? What kind of, when did God put it on your heart to go become a church planner?
Yeah. So I'm a fourth generation Southern Baptist pastor. So
nice.
Yeah, I grew up normal. My dad didn't become a pastor till I was 12. So I like to say I had like a normal childhood and then everything got flipped upside down. But when I was 12, he brought us into the house and he was like a successful businessman. We were pretty, not like wealthy, but we were well off. And he's like, hey, life's about to totally change. We're selling everything. We're kind of moving. We're going to plant a church. I'm like, what does plant a church mean? What's this have to do with gardening? And so, we started like 4 weeks later. It's hilarious. My dad's strategy was within a month. He found a school, put up a sign, free pancakes on Easter Sunday. And we started with like 40 people. It's just hilarious now because there's so much strategy that's put into place. But
free pancakes.
That's
you should bring that one back.
I know. Yeah. And so that really began my journey of just understanding church life. Where my calling is in it. And I really began to pray every morning, every night. God, what is your call in my life? And about when I was 13, I surrendered my life to ministries. There's like a Discipleship Now conference. And so that's when since I was 13, I've kind of known that's my trajectory. But then through high school, started to preach some and all that. Went to California Baptist University for college. And I remember telling my friends specifically, I want to do ministry, just not church planning. Like, I'll do anything. I was like literally willing to move to Malaysia and be a missionary rather than plant a church. And part of that's just because some of the baggage of seeing my dad. There's just a lot of pain that comes with church planning. There's a lot of instability. It just seems like it's easier for people to just like come and go because there's there's like no place. In my mind, you're a church plant until you have a building. So my father's church was portable for 14 years. Wow. And so I remember my senior year in high school, I had to sell my truck that I earned money. Like, I bought the truck when I was 16, but we had to sell it that summer in order to pay all the bills because just, the recession hit during that time and it was so tough. And I was like, you know what? Like, I blamed it on a church plant. Like, if we were a part of a bigger church, my dad's salary would be taken care of. I wouldn't have to get rid of my truck. So I just remember thinking like, Lord, I love you. I want to do ministry. I just don't want to plant a church. And also my dad, like, more and more I live life, the more I recognize how much I'm like him. But in my mind, I'm so different than him. So he's the architect, like, he's a church planner, entrepreneur, hustler. I'm like, I like to read, like all these books back here. Like, I like to write and think. So I'm like, I must not be a church planner. So try to do missions. Those doors closed. I did a revitalization while I was in college as a youth pastor. And I realized that's not my speed either. And so long story short, in 2016, I had been married to my wife for 3 years at that point. I was 24 years old and we launched a church in a movie theater. And we actually launched the church in my hometown where I grew up. And so here in Queen Creek, Arizona, and like the Southeast Valley of Phoenix. So I'm really grateful that I eventually planted a church. Because I did know a lot from seeing my dad go through stuff. So I wasn't surprised when heartache would come. I wasn't shocked, when the facility guy says, hey, you're not allowed in this building anymore. You got to go you got to rent something else because you're not allowed in here. Like, I kind of knew that was a part of it. Like when our trailer got stolen, like, my dad's trailer got stolen a decade ago too. Like, this is a part of the process. So some of that helped a lot finally once I was able to really accept that call. But I know I was only 24, but it was like in my mind, it was like a 6 to 8 year battle. Like, Lord, anything but plant a church.
Right. And did you, so you're 13, you kind of know, okay, I want to go into ministry, or that's kind of how you're feeling called to that. Did you go to college? work a normal job and then one day go, all right, I'm going to go plant a church? Or were you doing ministry jobs the whole time? Like, what was the,
Yeah.
path
Yeah.
through high
Yeah.
school?
So I was really lucky because my dad, like, really began to peek behind the curtain for me. Like, I was able to see a lot of the ministry workings, and it felt like he was consulting me. He was obviously not, but like he was, hey, what would you do in this situation? So like in high school, especially, he would kind of just show the dynamics of church leadership and help me.
Right.
But 13, again, I gave my life to the ministry. And then 16, I got licensed to preach. So I began preaching like once a month in different areas. I started a ministry in high school. So I had some of that experience, but also my dad's like, hey, like I poured concrete every single summer. He's like, you're going to learn what hard work is. And so I did that every single summer, still do it now as a side job. And then I actually umpired for 2 years.
Okay, nice.
My dad was like, hey, if you're going to be in ministry, you're going to deal with hot-headed people with terrible tempers, and you're going to learn at an early age, at 15, how to deal with that. So from 15 to 16, my first job was to be an umpire. I hated baseball, and I especially hated baseball after that. But it was like so many good life skills, from learning that. So I'm really grateful I had some experience outside of ministry. But yeah, once I went to college, I immediately like became a youth pastor and did a lot of that. So I really did do a lot of fast tracks. So when I graduated from college at 21, I immediately became an associate pastor for my dad's church.
Yeah.
And that was like the process of prepping me, getting my team together to launch 3 years later.
Right,
so that's kind of like the quick timeline.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool, man. When you got married, did your wife know you were going to be a church planner?
Yeah. So we started dating when we were 16. So she knew I always was going to be a pastor of some sort.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was just here for the ride, man. She's been amazing. We really wrestled with that. So like we were part of the North American Mission Board. So like they have a big, test where they take the wives like aside and ask, is this your call in life? And we always got scared because she's like, I didn't have like this divine moment like my husband did. But she's like, I just know I am called to go wherever he goes, and I'm going to be his support. So, and she's done wonderfully. And honestly, so like when we started our church, there's about 8 other guys that, we kind of started around the same time around this area. And there's only like 2 of us left. And so like it has been grueling, and there's been really hard days. Anybody who's a church planner knows. But yeah, my wife has just been there for the long haul. She's done incredible. We were both really nervous. Are we ready for this? And I think that's kind of what you should be. Like you should have that humility. I probably can't do this, because the people in that, that crew who were like so confident, they're not here anymore. Like there is something about having that weakness and humility of going, I honestly, if the Lord doesn't do what only he can do, that I know this won't work.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally makes sense. So you planted where you grew up or near where you grew up. Why'd you decide there versus going somewhere else?
Because a prophet's not accepted in his own hometown. So I thought, hey, let's make life really good. No, honestly, yeah. So I was in California for college, and I had a lot of opportunities there, but I just felt a draw to come back home. Vance Pittman, he's a mentor of mine. He often says like God doesn't call you to a church as much as he calls you to a city. Yeah. And so I just really felt a burden for my city. So it's a lot of LDS Mormons live here, and they're incredible people, fun to be around, but obviously poor theology. And so I really care about them. A lot of my story is leading LDS to Christ. And then also there's just a lot of nuns, just a lot of people that aren't interested in religion at all. And so, yeah, I just thought, man, these are the people I love. And I also think there's something about planting in a place where even if the church doesn't fail, even if the church fails, you're going to stay there. Because I really think so much. So I'm 8 years in now. I think so much of my ministry success, fruit that we're starting to see now is because I was just like, where else will I go? I'm just going to stick it out. Like I'm going to go as long as I can. I really just see in the Bible so much about endurance and pushing through those beginning seasons. And so, like I really feel bad for a lot of my friends who planted around the same time, their families in Kentucky or Arkansas or Florida, and it gets really lonely. And so I love the fact that I'm born in the West. So this is like a really unreached area. It's like, why I'm just going to plant where I'm at, because both grandparents are here. So we have babysitters for the kids. So there's just a lot of good stuff with that. There's also a lot of baggage though. Some people remember me as a teenager, so they're not coming to my church, so like there's some groups of people, it's like, I get it. You remember me in diapers. So, you do you go to that other place. So there's been some disadvantages, but there's just been a ton of advantages as well.
Yeah. I get it. So you're 8 years in. What are some of the biggest, I don't know, surprises or shockers along the way?
I was
If you could,
surprised how I was surprised how quickly we did not grow, if that phrase makes sense. I was kind of, like experienced a lot of ministry success up to that point. And so I just thought for sure we'd at least hit 200 quickly.
right,
And we didn't. And it was just like, that was super humbling. I also am surprised. I thought I can do it alone. So like when we launched, I had no other like associate pastor or no other team with me. And so that was just honestly moronic. Like that first year was just tough because it was just me and my wife. And so we learned a lot. So like if I were to do it over again, I would have had the launch phase, like the prep phase, be a whole lot longer.
right.
But at the same time, I think I'm who I am today because of those mishaps and that pain that we went through. So I almost, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I also am like, man, like how dumb were we? Like we started with like $5,000 in our account and we were like in the church account and like, hey, let's start a church. And so I know so many, just totally do it the opposite way. And I think it's better. Like my dad's church isn't too far away from mine as well. So when we launched, he sent 10 people with us. Nowadays, people send like 400, and but my dad's church was only 220 people at that time. And once we launched, they got land in a building. And so a year later, they jumped to like 1,000. But when they launched us, they only had 200. So it's not like I can take many with me anyways. So yeah, we just started in all the wrong ways, but I think my character is better as a result. So therefore, I'm really grateful for all of it. Yeah. There's a lot of what not to do for sure, but we're still here. So that's what I'm really proud of. Like just that we've had the perseverance, the tenacity. We never stop learning. We're constantly realizing, hey, that was a mistake. Let's just not make it again. And so, the God's been gracious to us as a result.
Yeah, I love that. What about things that have gone well along the way? What are some things that you can remember? It doesn't all have to be at the beginning, but just along the 8 years,
Okay.
what are some things, that you're like, whether you got it right because you planned on getting it right or you thought of it or it just kind of happened, you know what I'm saying? And God showed up. But like, what are some of the things that you feel like really worked for you guys?
Yeah. So something I'm really pumped about right now, we have this, we have like this discipleship plan for our church called Formed by Jesus. So formedbyjesus.com is like the website where we hold it. And so we're really doing a lot of practice-based discipleship. So for like the popular level, it's like John Mark Comer's doing a lot of that right now. I've kind of connected with him and some of those guys back in like 2017, 2018, and began to implement it kind of in 2019. But the last few years, we've gotten really organized. So last year we did a focus on Sabbath, scripture, then simplicity. This year it's hospitality, peacemaking, and generosity. And so we're like in the middle of the peacemaking practice right now. And it's just been really cool. Like for 3 months, we're saying, hey, we are followers, we're practitioners of the way of Jesus. And like, there's a lot of stuff we could do and we need to do. But like right now in this season, let's focus on like hospitality. Like we're a hospitable people. So we celebrate all the wins. Did you host somebody this week? Did you go to somebody's house? In Arizona, we're like, it's super hot out here. So if you've heard. And so in the summer, like everyone just closes their garage. Nobody hangs outside.
Right.
And so it makes it really hard because in the winter, we always feel awkward because it's like, well, I didn't see you all summer. I forgot your name. So like, there's a lot of weird things about Arizona because nobody's from here too.
Right.
A lot of people don't know each other. It's very isolated. So we've really found a lot of success of like guys saying the big win is just like getting to know your neighbors' names. Like, let's start there. And they're like, wow, this is so great. So it's been really cool to really just focus on those really tangible things to really help our people really take their next step in following the way. So we've just seen a lot of fruit from that. Honestly, I feel like our church has grown since then. Like our vision is really clear. Like we've really been able to determine, this is what I'm grateful for. I now know who we're not. Like when we first planted our church, I was trying to figure out who we were, but I didn't know all the way who we weren't. And now kind of ministering to our people, understanding our context more. Like I'm very comfortable mentioning to people the things that we're not, which I think is like a really good sign of clarity and moving in the right direction.
Yeah. How'd you figure those things out?
Yeah, by trying to be those things and realizing we're bad at it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Give me a few. Give me your top 3.
Yeah, I think one thing is like realizing maybe I don't even know if we're trying to ever become a big church. Like we don't really like I think like a lot of even smaller churches use mega church models and systems. And it's like, oh, that's not us. Like, I don't even know if I would like that. So some of that, like, hey, some systems, we need to have systems for sure, and we're getting better at those.
Right.
But there's other things where like, no, we're going to make that part always personal. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to make it where I'm always the one reaching out. So that's one thing. Like, hey, you're going to be known at this community. Like, after your first Sunday, I will know your name.
Right.
When you come in, I'm going to say, hey, John, so that's one thing. Another is that we're practice-based community. So we're not ashamed of that. So like, in other words, we're not here just to give some pick me up on the weekend, just to come in. Like, no, we practice this thing together. And so we hold each other accountable. We give each other a lot of grace, but there's a lot of effort that we put in.
Yeah.
Even just kind of our music, just the way our music is, it's like, hey, and by God's grace, when we started our church, there was like only 2 churches in our whole city. There's a lot now because it's a growing city, and there's a lot of like mega churches, and it's wonderful. So it's like, hey, if you want that kind of music, you want that kind of style, like go to it. That's just not we're not that, and we're okay with that. And we root for those guys. And I just like that idea that the kingdom is an ecosystem, and we are just a type of church. We need to church this whole city. Our church can't save the whole city. So we're very comfortable. Shout out to those churches who do those things. This is our church. We do these things.
Right.
And so that's just been like helpful and encouraging for our people.
Yeah. I imagine it, being the lead pastor, it kind of alleviates pressure too.
What do you mean?
If you feel this
pressure. Oh, it alleviates pressure on me when I realize, absolutely.
Like self-imposed pressure, not pressure that anybody is putting on you per se, but like feeling like you need to be like somebody else or like some other church or anything like that. If you can get comfortable where you feel like this is what God called us to do, this is who I am, and this is how church looks. And like, I feel great about that.
Yeah. Amen. So like a big, so I wrote a book right there, Non-Anxious Pastor. And like, that's like a thesis of mine. I really think we're in an anxious culture, constantly comparing and worrying. And I think the more pastors can just be content with who we are and who we're not, and non-anxious and just enjoying the moment and being relaxed and present on a Sunday, like that really does make an impact for your congregation. So if anything, probably the who we're not thing was most helpful just for me. So when I saw other churches doing well, I'm rooting for them. I'm not like, oh no, that should have been us. Right. And when they're like, hey, how come your church isn't that? It's like, that's just not what we're called to. And that's, so yeah, that's so true. It's relieved a lot of pressure on me for sure.
Yeah. What we were talking before, and you said, just in the last little bit, you feel like you guys are growing, maybe more than in the past or more than any other time, and you're working on some things. So what's changed, or what do you see different in the last year or so?
Okay, yeah. So we've grown so we launched into our new building 15 months ago, and we've grown by 100% since then. So AKA we've doubled in size. Right. So that's cool. So we've gone from 1 service to 2 services, which is cool. I think it's a couple things. I think our teaching is very intentional. We have a vision with our teaching. So like in my mind, and I don't know if this makes sense, but our vision isn't so much here's the type of building we're building. Our vision is here's the type of people we're creating. And so like when we give our people this 3-year trajectory with these 9 practices, I think it's really giving people, oh, okay, here's the on-ramp and here's how I join and here's what we're doing next. So I think it gives people, I think that's another way of being a visionary, right? And so I think the vision's been very clear. It's not just random series. Everything builds on top of each other. So that's been really encouraging and really fun. So like all of this year, 2024, we packaged the whole year as the whole vision was how to make friends and love other people. Within that is the practice of hospitality, peacemaking, and generosity. And then when we're not doing those practice series, we're going through the book of Acts. And so I think that clarity has been helpful. Also, though, have you heard of Mike Santiago, the Breaking 200 course that he does?
I have heard of it. I don't know a lot about it, though.
Yeah, so he's, different stream than I think he's Assemblies of God. We're, North American Mission Board, Sin Network, Southern Baptist. But we just picked up some of his playbook. Super grateful for him. So every first Sunday of the month, we do Party with the Pastors. And every second Sunday of the month, we do a growth track. And doing that has been the game changer. So the Party with the Pastors is after each service. So we just transitioned to 2 services in Easter. So it's 20 minutes. So with the promise, hey, if you're new, your first step should come to the party with the pastor. It's only 20 minutes long, and we give you refreshments. It used to be pizza, but now we have an early service. So now it's like bagels, so
Pancakes, bro.
pancakes. I forget, my man.
What is going on?
It's so funny. Yeah. So, but for 20 minutes, that first Sunday is just like the vision of like our core values. This is what we do. Right. This is who we are. And so, yeah, so that's like, we're always pushing that. And so I think it gives people a good opportunity to meet us, to talk to us, but also for us to describe again, who we are and who we're not. And then the second Sunday of every month is Growth Track, which is essentially, here's what our groups are and how you can join one. And here's all the different ways you can serve, and you can start today, Mm-hmm. So, and so that's been really good. Like I'm just embarrassed now. The first few years of our church plant, it was so organic. Like, hey, if you want to serve, just come talk to me, or just go talk to our kids director, and just people win it. Right. But it's just cool. I'll just never do that. And so, yeah, improving those systems, have just been night and day. Like, it's just been really helpful retaining people. So it used to be, it took about 6 to 9 months to get people like plugged in. Now it's like, 2 to 4 months. They're like serving one, sitting one, and doing all of those things. So really cranking that up keeps them in. And I think we've made a shift in our understanding. I saw this on Instagram the other day. I thought it was really good. I think it's a really famous pastor, but I don't remember his name. But he said in the 90s, content was king, right? Because like it was hard to come across a good preacher. Content was what it's all about. But nowadays, it's about community. Yeah. People don't have that. In the 90s, they had community. Today, they don't. In the 90s, they didn't have content. Today, we have more than enough content. So we've really leaned into like, we're integrating you into our family. And look, like Sunday sermons, great, whatever. But it's about like doing this thing together. And so we're trying to really create more systems to get people plugged in and connected, from the crowd to the community to the core is kind of the language that we use. And so, yeah, that has just been, it's not like my preaching's changed. It's not like, the logo got better. We still do the same ad. But like that has helped us tremendously in like making those visitors stick.
Why do you think that is? Like, why did doing those couple of, because you mentioned really two things, two classes, right?
Yeah. Because I don't know. I feel like it's helped people. Again, we help make the decision for them. It's just kind of, okay, here's another thing. Here's a tip. This is for people, right, who are like planning churches maybe, right? Yeah. So another tip we just started adopting. So here's the third trick, whatever you want to call it. So I think it's better on-ramps is the quick answer. Okay. So I think it's, hey, and if you missed first Sunday, it's great. You know what? We got it again the next month. Right. So the first Sunday thing, like every 4 or 5 weeks, you can always get plugged in. So I think that's comforting to people. I think people take that up on that offer. But the latest one, we again saw another church. I think it was Vintage LA. They do this thing called the Stick 6 Challenge. Have you heard of the Stick 6?
No.
Bro, it's so great. So we're telling people, hey, finding a church is hard. So we do this like in the welcome part. Finding a church is difficult. We get it. Like there's just a lot of pressure and you just don't know if you got it right. Here's our offer to you, our challenge. For 6 weeks, come to our church for the next 6 weeks. Here's what you're going to experience within the next 6 weeks. Every first Sunday is party with the pastor. Every second Sunday is growth track. Every third Sunday is communion. So we kind of like lay out some of the things.
Right.
And like, look, this is a hard decision. You'll never be able to make that decision based off one Sunday. Maybe, I had a bad day or you had a bad day or whatever. Yeah. But after 6 weeks, we really think you'd be able to make that decision. And if we're not the right place, please let us help you find another one. There's plenty of gospel-centered churches here. We love them. We're for them. Let us help you.
Right.
And so that's been helpful for people because they're like, honestly, like, yeah, one of the weeks, the first Sunday, I thought, maybe. But we came 2 more Sundays and we're like, this is it. Like, right. But he's like, we would have never known that if we just gave you that one shot. Yeah. So they really appreciated that challenge.
I love that because it's kind of just asking people to do something, and it's not like they're raising their hand or filling out a card or whatever. True. But you're literally just asking, putting it on their mind, and then if a family comes, the spouses have a chat or whatever. But just asking, I feel like kind of makes a big impact. Like, hey, give us a shot. If you're new, give us a shot for 6 weeks, and then they like think about that versus going whatever, whether it's good or bad. Like they go and then they kind of don't. There's nothing pulling them back, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe there is, but the ask is like a way to make sure everybody feels like pulled back just from doing that. And you said, oh, we got the plan laid out, so they know what's coming next week. Maybe growth track is coming and they want to go jump in, like they can.
Exactly.
So I think that's super cool.
Yeah. And part of our vision statement is we don't make attenders, we make disciples. So like, we're always saying kind of like, hey, like to make attenders, cool, we can make this great service and you'd be blown away, but that's not really our win. So come for a while, you'll see how we're actually like practicing this thing.
Yeah.
So another thing that's been helpful is for our hospitality series. I'm trying to think if I can show you a photo on my phone and onto the camera, but we came up with this like ping pong ball display. And so we put it together where we would have 734 ping pong balls will fill this up perfectly based off of Luke 7:34, which the Son of Man came eating and drinking. So this whole thing about how he's come to be hospitable with us. And so we're supposed to be hospitable to others. So let's see if you can see this, but it's really been catching on.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
See, it says set the table.
Yeah.
Although it's backwards for you, but it says set the table. And so it's 734 mils. So these are all the ping pong balls. So every Sunday they mark their name on it and drop it in. So it's just another way of like saying, hey, we're participating together.
They put their name on it, put the ball in for what? What do they have to do in order to?
Yeah. If they host a saint, stranger, or sinner, which was the whole package for the hospitality series. So so it's just even hosting somebody from our church. So all of our group leaders, they get to put a ping pong ball in every week because they host group, one night a week. So it's been really cool for people to be like, oh, we're doing this thing together. We're all in. So we're trying to find ways to just break that consumer mentality. We're practicing this together. We're participating together. And so, little things like that have been helpful to keep the vision in front of people.
Right. That's very cool. So I guess, again, you said something at the beginning when we were chatting before the episode, but you guys you're in two services. You moved from one building back downtown. So now you're in a new building for the last year or so. And are you doing a sort of a building fund type of project now, or like looking to get into a building, or starting to think about that? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, totally. If you want to give, it sounds like you sound really passionate about this.
I'm teeing it up for you.
So it's kind of, so the quick story is that we started in a movie theater. Things went well, but there's never a good spot for kids. We made it work. We started to find momentum. COVID hit, just like the rest of everybody. Really, we lost 70% of our people. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. Because we couldn't find a place to gather. And then we finally found a place, but it was another church and it's on Sunday nights. So that just killed all momentum. It was so hard. I mean, those were grueling years. It was 2 years of doing that. And then we found the school back in the area. So the theater is like downtown Queen Creek, which is like a good downtown, And so the school is like right by it. I mean, you can throw a rock to the theater, well, if you're Uncle Rico, but it's close enough. And so Napoleon Dynamite reference, that's old. So my millennial is showing. We're back in that area. So the church that we were meeting at was like way down south, 15 minutes the other direction. So it almost felt like we were relaunching. So I had 3 goals. I said, okay, first goal is to fill up the first service, like pack it out. So it took like 8 to 10 months to do that. So we were packing it out finally. Then I was like, okay, now we need a couple months to roll out to our team. We're going to go to 2 services, which is big because we've never been to 2 services. Yeah. So a lot of our people have been saved at our church. So for me, it's like, I grew up in church. We've done 2 services all the time. Serve one, sit one. All of that's natural to me. To these people, they're like, what? Like, what does that mean? How do we go to 2 services? So we had to like really take our team leaders through it. So then I said, okay, our next goal, which we're in the middle of, is to completely fill both services. Okay. And so right now, like we have one of our services is already about 80% capacity, which is great. The early service of all services. And then the later service is about like 50 to 60%. So we need to really work on that. So the idea was we pack out both of these services. Our budget should reflect, like we can get really aggressive about getting land and building a building. So I knew with the size we were at, in the spot we're in, we could not afford a building loan with just one service filled with people. So last Sunday, somebody came up to me, a random guy, and he was like, hey, what's your plan? So I just told him told him everything I told you. So now we're in the middle of the 2 services, but now we're starting to like meet with a realtor because we're really believing that these 2 services will fill up soon.
Yeah.
He's like, cool. Yeah. So you have a building fund? I'm like, yeah, I've never really promoted it because we never really had anything yet because I've been focusing on these other things first. So I didn't think anything of it. And then my finance guy called me later yesterday afternoon, was like, hey, we just got a $42,000 check for a building fund. I was like, let's go. Okay. Praise the Lord.
Amazing.
So I'm assuming it was that guy. I don't know who it was, but let's go. So super pumped, super grateful. So now we do have a building fund, and so yeah, we're excited to kind of like share that good news.
That's a solid nod to you didn't even say anything.
And didn't even say that's the best kind of building campaign.
Yeah. Wait till you say something.
Yeah. And isn't that great? I'll be able to start with that momentum. Like, hey, we already have this much in it.
Right.
Totally. And so, yeah, we're excited about that. The Queen Creek is Queen Creek is like one of the fastest growing cities in America, which also means it's getting very expensive.
Right.
So that thought's a bit overwhelming. Per acre is nothing like it used to be. So my dad bought property. It was like $20,000 an acre. Now it's, I don't even want to know. I think it's near the $1 million. And
no
if it's
way.
like definitely downtown, it's like insane. Wow.
So you'll try to go downtown somewhere, I imagine, if you can.
Yeah, Lord willing, we want to be as close to that area as possible because that's like, because we're able to reach people from like different parts of like Gilbert and Chandler too. Right. So yeah. Anyways, thanks for asking. Crazy, I'm excited about it, pumped about it, and again, I didn't even have to say nothing. So that's my favorite kind of campaign so far.
That's so good. Well, before we wrap, what's a few things that you would tell the new church planner or somebody that's thinking about church planning? You've been on an 8-year journey. You've gone through the ups and downs. You've stuck it out. You're seeing some great things happen right now. But what would you tell the new church planner?
Yeah, I would say I never understood the phrase, but I totally get it now. People overestimate what they can do in a year, underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Right.
I think when God... there's a book, The Making of a Leader by Robert J. Clinton. I would have them read that and realize, especially if you're like younger like me, by God's grace, he doesn't use us, he loves us. And so what I really love is now when I look at the story of 8 years, I hated it just of like never having a huge success story, just slowly growing and then losing people and then growing a bit more, 3 steps ahead, 2 steps back. But when you read that book, you realize, oh, God wants to do something powerful in me before he ever does something powerful through me. And so I think realizing that church planning is a long game. God thinks in decades, we think in days. And so being very slow, and I have seen people start with a huge flash and a huge crowd and it dwindle away almost just as fast. Right. And so I think there's something about being a lot wiser than we did and starting with more people than we did. But I wouldn't be too discouraged starting small and being slow. What is that in Zephaniah? Do not despise small beginnings. So stay faithful, give at least a decade of your life to it, and enjoy it. Like, I'm just really grateful. I at least had the mind to know, I think because I'm a pastor's kid, I need to enjoy my kids. My family is so much more important than ministry. I know that to the core of my being. And I think being a pastor's kid helped me learn that lesson fast. So it's like, at the end of the day, I would much rather have a thriving, healthy, happy marriage and family than a church. So work on that first and foremost in your own soul, and just be grateful for all the different parts of the journey. It's a long one.
Yeah. Amen, man. I love that. Persevere through it all, man. Longevity is a big deal, right? Longevity matters. And I get it's like most things. You don't see at the beginning, like you were saying, year one, you want to do big things, but it doesn't happen. But you stick at something for 10 years and it's you have a far better chance of success if you're thinking in 10-year periods versus 1 year. So I love that. Trey, it's been great, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Frank. Appreciate you.
Where should people go to find your website and where they can give to the building fund?
My guy. So you can learn about me at TreyVanCamp.com, but our church is just pc.church. And you can do the next steps button on the bottom to give to the building fund if you would so desire. But I imagine these other church planners probably won't be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never know.
We'll try,
I don't know.
try to get it out to everyone.
I didn't know that other guy was doing this either, yesterday's check. So you never know what's going to happen. But yeah, pc.church. I'm super pumped. I landed that short URL.
Yeah.
So
good.
That's where you can find us.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Trey. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks, guys, for listening. And we will catch you next week on another episode of Modern Church Leader. See ya.